Amy looked at the clock. It was 2 in the morning. Her father and mother went to their separate rooms at 11 o'clock and seemed to be asleep for a long time. The girl quietly slid off the bed and went out into the corridor, where she found her father's briefcase. Without breathing, Amy opened it and pulled out the usual school notebook, which all evening her mother and father had been talking about. Sending the 14-year-old daughter out of the kitchen, clutching the notebook to her chest, Amy went back to her room, turned on the desk lamp, and immersed herself in reading. August 19th, 2019.
Dear Diary, my phone is completely dead, so I decided to give you a try. It's almost like texting myself.
August 20th, 2019.
Arranged to meet with Brendan today. We had a plan for a new video for TikTok. I don't have a phone right now, but my mother promises to buy me one in a week, so my friend agreed to help me with the channel. He is my most valued confidant. Unfortunately, everything was spoiled by the constant rain outside. We moved the whole thing to tomorrow. Luckily, it's the summer holidays, so I have more than enough time to waste on music and TV series. Although I don't feel comfortable without my cell phone, I still have internet and a laptop, so things are not so bad.
August 21st, 2019.
Last night, my mom came home from work and locked herself in her room. I heard her crying. She didn't make dinner, so I had to get into the fridge and make myself a sandwich. At night, I heard her taking a shower. I didn't go out into the hallway, though I really wanted to talk to her. After my father died, she'd been through a lot worse. I decided to postpone my conversation until the morning, but in the morning, I overslept the moment she left for work. I would have to talk to her in the evening. We recorded a new video for TikTok with Brandy. I got home late and my mom made dinner, but she locked herself in her room again, and we still couldn't talk about yesterday. I'll talk to her tomorrow. That doesn't sound like her.
August 28th, 2019.
She had been leaving early for work all the previous week, and it wasn't until the morning, on her day off, I managed to talk to my mother. Only 3 days later, on Saturday, that I saw her in the kitchen. She had become gaunt, and there was a big bruise on her cheekbone, though she tried to cover it with makeup. Likewise, she had circles under her eyes, and her hands were shaking. I noticed bruises on her wrist. Maybe she was beaten. We live in a quiet area, and I've never heard about any assaults on women. Maybe something happened at her work. I tried to hug her and ask what had happened that Tuesday, but she told me not to leave her alone and turned away. I could see tears in her eyes. She forbid me to ask anything else.
September 2nd, 2019.
The holidays are over. I'm back at school. I haven't seen my friends for a long time. Everyone has a load of news. And as for Amy, she turned into a real beauty. Girls change so quickly, after all. By the way, she subscribed to my TikTok and offered to help me with the channel. I don't mind. I think we'll record a video together. The only thing is that it is difficult to keep in touch because my mother hasn't bought me a new smartphone yet.
October 1st, 2019.
Didn't think I'd get back to the diary. I found the notebook under the bed when I was cleaning the room. My mom has completely stopped coming to see me. She looks very bad and hardly talks to me. I see her sometimes in the evenings, almost in passing. 2 days ago, I took a clump of her hair out of the bathtub, and another clump was swept out of the hallway. She had never lost so much hair. I noticed a week ago that she wasn't sleeping at night. I often have to wake up to her sobbing. She never opens the door and also vomits all the time. We don't communicate at all, although she started cooking. It tastes awful. For some reason, she no longer uses salt and spices. Today, I noticed a strange smell in the apartment. I haven't found the source, but it is freaking me out.
October 4th, 2019.
I was recording a new video on my laptop when suddenly my mom walked in. At first, I thought it turned out to be very funny, so I published it. But half an hour later, I had to delete it. Subscribers flooded me with the same kind of comments. Dude, what's up with that woman? Is that your mother? I shit myself. I thought it was a screamer. I also realized what smells so bad in our apartment. The smell is coming from my mother and from her room. Now, I'm pretty sure she's sick.
October 11th, 2019.
My mom didn't pay the internet bill. I tried to talk to her, but she wouldn't open the door to her room and wouldn't answer. I hear her moaning and her bed creaking. She has completely stopped taking care of herself. I find clumps of hair all over the apartment. There is a persistent smell of vomit in the bathroom, the toilet, and the kitchen. The stench from her room is unbearable. I can't even clean it, as she won't let me in, and she refuses to talk to me. What's the matter with her? Even after my father died, she didn't go down like that. I'm ashamed as hell to tell anyone about what I've been seeing. Every day for 2 months. I could talk to our school counselor, but then custody would get involved, and I don't want to leave my mom alone. She doesn't go to work anymore. She told me something about a leave of absence, but I think she got fired. With her job at the grocery store, the smell coming from her would only drive people away. I'm not worried about money yet. We have some savings, and also the survivor's pension. The only thing that worries me is that my mother refuses to see a doctor.
October 12th, 2019.
My mom vomited during the night. I heard her moan, then she started crying. I ran out of the room and tried to help her off the bathroom floor, but she sharply pushed me right into the wall and hissed angrily to get into my room. My shoulder hurts badly.
October 14th, 2019.
Today, I had to buy some groceries myself. There was nothing to eat at home. My mom's bag was lying in the hallway. I found the cart inside. Luckily, I remembered the password. Mom, as usual, locked herself in her room, and I haven't seen her since the day before yesterday. I can't get the smell out of the apartment, and all my clothes are getting stinky.
October 15th, 2019.
Tonight, I heard my mom come out of her room. She was walking around the kitchen, slamming the refrigerator door without turning on the lights. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway, and she stopped outside my room. I almost jumped out of bed, but for some reason, I managed to restrain myself. She stood at the door, breathing heavily, but she didn't enter the room. I got scared. When I woke up in the morning, my mother was sitting in the kitchen. She looked like a shadow of herself, her hair thinning, her head clearly spaced, and her nose severely sharpened. The skin had turned gray, and the smell was disgusting. She wore a dirty bathrobe that barely covered her skinny and dirty knees, and blue threads of blood vessels showed through her hands and feet. My mother was sitting as if nothing had happened, drinking tea. After noticing me, she smiled crookedly.
Jenny, do you want something to drink?
I shuddered at the sound of her voice. It had changed too. It had become some kind of whistling. I offered to call her a doctor, and again made an attempt to move the conversation to what was going on, and how I felt about it all.
Daniel, I don't need a doctor. There's nothing wrong with me.
And when she took a sip of her tea, I heard her stomach rumble loudly.
Aren't you feeling any shame, daughter? I'm a little sick, but I'm better now. And by the way, I got a call from our neighbor, Miss Deacon, asking me to come over. She needs some help. One more thing. I don't mind if you take my card and buy groceries.
Miss Deacon is a lonely pensioner who once took me, at my parents' request, to school until 3rd grade. She was now quite old, and my parents always helped her a little with groceries and little requests. After my father died, my mother somehow stopped communicating with neighbors and became withdrawn. I think communicating with Mrs. Deacon will do her good. The old woman, though she has long forgotten my name, always treated my mother almost like a daughter. After an hour, my mother tried to clean herself up for the first time in 2 months and left. I exhaled, and before leaving for school, I looked into her room. The windows were curtained. Crumpled, dirty linens were lying in the corner. The room was a mess and smelled awfully bad. There were dirty streaks on the floor and, for some reason, on the walls. It looked like she was throwing up on the floor, but she never cleaned up after herself. I ran out of her room, and tears came to my eyes in the hallway. My mother is sick. Now I have to do something about it.
October 16th, 2019.
Last night, my mom came back from a neighbor's apartment, and I was surprised at the change. The smell from her seemed to vanish. There was a slightly frantic glint in her eyes, and she was nervously running her fingers through her dishevelled hair. Her fingers are so long, I'd never noticed it. And her fingernails were long, grayish, and sharp. Mom asked if I'd eaten anything. I said yes. Then she went to the bedroom and locked herself in. Maybe things will still change.
October 17th, 2019.
At night, I heard the front door of our apartment slam. Mom had gone out somewhere. I didn't venture out of my room and just looked at the electronic alarm clock next to my laptop. It was about 2 in the morning. Mom came back an hour later. Even though she was trying not to make any noise, I tensed up. Walking past my room, she stopped, and I heard her breathing outside the door. It lasted a minute, no more. Then I heard the door of her room closing.
October 24th, 2019.
Every night, for a week now, my mom goes somewhere. I also noticed that she doesn't eat anything at all. I'm the only one who eats and buys groceries. My TikTok channel is completely abandoned. My mom didn't buy me a smartphone, and I have no money to buy it on my own. I tried to pay for the internet, but there wasn't so much money on the card. Hope it would be enough to buy something to eat. The pension is the only money I can get, so I have to wait at least a week more. I started hanging out at Brandy's more, and more often after class, and only came home at 10 or 11 p.m. I explained to his parents that I had a quarrel with my mother.
October 25th, 2019.
Tonight I got up to go to the bathroom, almost opening my eyes. I pulled the door and went into the hallway. Suddenly, with my side vision, I saw a picture that made my sleep instantly vanish. My mother was standing in the kitchen doorway. The moonlight illuminated her from behind. Her head was hanging off to the side, with her mouth open. Arms dangled along her body. I thought I had wet my pants right where I was standing. I jumped into the bathroom and closed it from the inside. A second later, someone was scraping on the door. Then the sound stopped, and I heard the door to my mother's room slam with force. I almost jumped out of the bathroom crying. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't sleep until the morning. It barely dawned when I ran out of the apartment with my backpack. The school seems to be a much safer place.
Amy closed the diary and burst into tears. She remembered that day when Danny, her childhood friend and playmate, rushed into the classroom when only Amy herself and her friend were there. Parents always brought them to school early. Danny looked really strange. He was disheveled and nervous, waving the girls off. He sat down on the back desk and grabbed his head with his hands. He was crying. Amy then went over to him and put her arm around his shoulders.
Danny, come on, why are you crying? Maybe someone hurt you? I may tell my dad. He's a cop, you know.
Danny sat and cried. His skinny shoulders were shaking, but their classmates began to enter the classroom, and the boy, pulling himself together, wiped away his tears and whispered to Amy.
I'll tell you later.
But later never came. The next day, Amy went to the hospital with an attack of appendicitis, where she spent the entire fall break, and she never got to talk to Dan or see him again. Amy wiped away her tears and opened the notebook again. October 26, 2019.
From that night on, I started locking my room door with a latch. Thanks to my dad. He put it up when he realized that I should have my own privacy.
November 2nd, 2019.
Every night, I wake up to my mother trying to get into my room. She pulls the doorknob, but the latch holds up firmly. Then the front door slams, and Mom leaves for an hour or two. In the morning, I never see my mother again. Moreover, I try not to leave my room when it gets dark. I confess that several times at night, I have already peed out of the window. It's always dirty at home, no matter how much I clean. New stains appear on the walls and floor. The whole carpet in the hallway is covered in sticky stuff. I rolled it up and took it to the trash. Mom didn't seem to notice anything. Paid for the internet, but I still can't get online. Need to call and find out what the problem is. But our phone is disconnected. I think I'm screwed. I don't even know who to ask for help. It's the vacations. Brendan's parents are looking at me askance. Their family isn't so wealthy, and they have 3 younger children. I can't have dinner with them every day, and they can't keep me overnight. I don't want to involve their parents. They don't have time for other people's problems, especially now. When Danny's in the hospital, he has complications after a simple operation. I'm very afraid of my mom.
November 3rd, 2019.
Tonight, I noticed the profile of my mother yanked into her room in front of me. She had gotten incredibly thin, but her belly. Is she pregnant? Generally speaking, pregnancy could explain a lot of things. Nausea, for example. But there's lots of other stuff. And who is the father? It's not like she has anyone. I am afraid of this conjecture, but maybe she was raped. That time, I wanted to talk to her again, but she won't open the door to me. For 3 weeks now, my mother has been going out every night, spending her days locked in her room. She doesn't eat anything.
November 11th, 2019.
I can't go back to school anymore. I'm ashamed, as I have no clean clothes, no money, and we've been blacked out for not paying the bills. For 2 days now, I've just been lying in my room, listening to the sounds of the apartment. I'm afraid to even go out to the kitchen. Though, being very hungry, there is only buckwheat left. I didn't hear my mother at all during the day, and last night, she scared me again. I went out into the kitchen, put the kettle on, and Mom came out of her room. For the first time in a month, I saw her face to face. It wasn't dark yet, the gas burner adding some dim light. Mom was in the same dirty robe, with thin arms, greasy, sparsely spaced hair, sunken eyes, and a blackened mouth. It's hard to forget the disgusting smile from her body, the gray and stretched skin on her face, and on her sagging breasts, and a large belly standing out on such a lean and haggard body. She almost whispered my name. A disgusting smell hit me. After saying that she was hungry, she suddenly raised her hand to put something in her mouth. God, was it a finger? Someone's finger? After pushing my mother away, I jumped out of the kitchen and rushed to my room. In a second, she was already whimpering quietly and scratching at my door. To calm down, I grabbed my diary and kept writing down what was happening to my mother and to me.
November 12th, 2019.
This morning, our doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw our neighbor from the 3rd floor. Standing in the staircase, she called for my mother and told me some creepy story about Miss Deacon. Her grandnephew had come to visit her and found a real mess in the apartment. He was shocked when he saw human bones all over the place. It seems that some wild animal ate the old lady right in our house. The police are questioning the residents, and your mom needs to talk to an investigator. She asked me what was smelling so badly, but I mumbled something unclean and closed the door. Suddenly, a wild fear overwhelmed me. Turning around, I found myself in the clinging arms of my mother. Her eyes were black, her breath stank. I felt nauseous. She was demanding food. I tried to push her away, but she dug her long nails into my shoulders. Her eyes, black and cruel, were no longer at all like my mother's eyes. In front of me stood a vile, stinking monster. She opened her mouth, and I saw yellow sharp teeth and a black, long, trembling tongue with which she tried to lick my cheek. I pushed her away with all my might and rushed down to the hall toward my room. But my mother ducked between me and the room door. I pushed her away again and rushed into the kitchen, where I managed to grab only a fork lying lonely by the cooker. When I turned around, the monster who had once been my dearest and the most beloved person was standing in front of me. The robe was open, so I saw her skinny gray body and the ripping belly. There was nothing of my mother in that skinny, foul-smelling gray creature anymore. It clawed at me, and I heard its stomach rumble loudly. It also seemed to me that its restless belly slightly moved. Fainting from the horror and the stench, I swung around and jammed a fork into the creature's eye. After that, I seemed to lose consciousness. When I came to my senses, it was dark outside. My mother was lying in her arms, stretched out in different directions. A massive silver fork was sticking out of her left eye. There was a huge bloody hole in her stomach. The kitchen was covered with her blood. But worst of all, there was some kind of blood trail stretched from my mother's body to her room. It was as if some bloody slug had ripped into her insides and broken free. The door to my mother's room was half open. I slammed it with a force and secured it with the kitchen table. Then I locked myself in my room, and now I'm trying to figure out what to do. What was that? What happened to my mom? Maybe I'm getting crazy. I couldn't kill her, right?
Amy put the notebook aside and wiped away her tears. She read the last pages of the diary, barely restraining her sobs. Her father told her that Dan and his mother had been found mutilated and murdered in their apartment a few days ago by the officer who was investigating the murder of their neighbor, Mrs. Deacon. The door was open, so he came in to ask a few questions. What the investigator saw there deprived him of his black hair forever and made him vomit all over the stairwell. The blood trail from the apartment was lost somewhere in the attic.